welcome everybody. I'd like to first introduce our panelists. So first panelist will be Giovanni Franzese. Giovanni, please come on board. Next one is Muneeb Shah. Neeraj Srivastava and Sonny Mohanty. So this topic, just to give some background and context. I'm John Velissarios. I spent a number of years working in the blockchain space, and also having worked primarily in the enterprise blockchain space. And this topic of public versus private comes up over and over again, and is one that is very relevant, I think, for not only this conference, but for many of the different conferences regarding sort of blockchain and enterprise deployments. This is what I'd like to do today is maybe just frame it a little bit and then pass over to each of the panelists to firstly introduce themselves a little bit more than what I've done in the introduction. And then sort of take a position, sort of talk about some of the examples or a use case or a project that you worked on in the past, and why either a public or a private blockchain was used in that scenario. And then also, why do you think that was the most relevant for the sort of the project itself? And also to conclude with a statement about whether a public or a private blockchain was the most appropriate for that particular project and scenario. So before I do that, I just wanted to quickly mention and quickly introduce Giovanni, who's head of IP commercial operations at nChain. Thank you. And maybe if you can give us your perspective, and then let's jump in.
Sure. Here, I would like to start actually with my previous experience before joining nChain, which was pretty related to a big corporates in telecom. And I have the privilege, the honor to really set up the organization of blockchain for this big telco company, and mainly focusing on enterprise blockchain application, the very first time for telecom, and with a great success, I have to say, because it was now 6 years ago, more or less. It was the very first time a telecom company, its name is Ericsson, which was my former company. The first time a telecom company providing a blockchain solution to address many things, actually. I started internally to prove the technology works for internal business processes, and then it turned out it worked well. The management was convinced of the goodness of the technology, and then we moved externally with our clients, and from there many things. Here I see also some former not colleagues, but we worked together in other positions. But I started with private permissioned blockchain, and actually this is the only way you can start in a big corporate. But my ambition and also my vision was you can make enterprise blockchain on public, and that's why at the end I joined nChain, giving me the chance to bring enterprise blockchain to public. It's feasible. Maybe I stop here.
Great. Muneeb, you want to quickly just introduce yourself? And
thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. Muneeb Shah. I head digital assets consulting at EY, focused mainly on financial services. Been in the blockchain and DLT space, since around 2015, 2016 now. Primary background in TradFi, payments, trade, treasury. And it was quite heartening to see that the initial use cases that we focused on from a blockchain perspective were all oriented towards financial services in some shape or form. And then we saw a transition wherein it was oil and gas, utilities, retail, consumer goods, supply chain, those kind of use cases coming to fore more prominently. The interesting fact was that a lot of the enterprises, as Giovanni also mentioned, were focused mainly on private permission blockchain. So that's where we spent the bulk of the effort during the earlier years of blockchain adoption as it went through enterprise scale. But now we are at a point of inflection wherein public chains are becoming increasingly amenable to enterprises. A lot of enterprises want to experiment on public chains, and rightly so, because we do believe that the future would be public in due course. Having said that, there are also a lot of nuances that we need to consider, and we'll unravel a little bit of that more as we go through the panel today. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Neeraj?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Neeraj Srivastava. I've been in the blockchain space since almost 2011, when you Google blockchain, nothing used to come up. Blockchain basically was a net new word which was coined in 2010-11 when the things came out. I've been one of the first few coders on Bitcoin, one of the first very few coders on Ethereum. I developed one of the very first course on Ethereum, which is still on Udemy, which did very good in the initial days. So as you can see, I'm one of the oldies in the blockchain space. I've lived and seen the way the blockchain has grown from then till now. So that's who I am. Now, coming to the public and private blockchain, this debate has been going on for a while that what's the way to go? Is it going to be a private chain? Is it going to be a public chain? But the reality is they both are going to coexist. The similarity, the way I try to explain this thing is, right, public and private blockchain is exactly like a local network, LAN, versus internet. You cannot say that always internet is going to be there or always local network is going to be there. As we all know, internet is nothing but it is a combination of networks across the world. They all got interconnected, and therefore the internet is in front of us. The way I see blockchain has been growing since last 10 years and it will continue to grow. We all see big enterprises across the world are setting up their own network. At the same time, you can see there are lots of protocols coming along which can connect all those networks together. So that's where the public and private blockchain is going to work together. We are yet not there, but in the ecosystem, and you can see lots of people across who are working towards that direction, where both private chain, public chain will come together to create a use case which the world has never seen before.
Great, thank you. Sonny?
Hi, my name is Sonny Mohanty. I represent XDC Network. I'm based out of Singapore. XDC Network is a layer 1 blockchain. I recently joined them as the head of ventures ecosystem. And what does that mean? In my role, my goal is to build more dApps on the layer 1 blockchain. It's a public chain. We also have a private element like a XDC subnet. So depending on the client's requirements, we can build a private blockchain for the client as well. So primarily, XDC Network is a RWA chain. And some of the use cases that already built on XDC is RWA, trade financing. Currently, we are running a acceleration program with Techstars, Tenity in Singapore, Plug and Play as well, to invest into dApps so that they can come and build on XDC chain. So some of the use cases cut across AI, staking, restaking, DeepIn. So these are some of the focus areas for this program, and I am leading this program from Singapore. But this is open to all the dApps and the project owners, the founders, the builders all over the world globally. So that's about XDC and me. Coming to public and private, I would really agree with Neeraj, sorry. I think what I have seen, based out of Singapore, I think the Central Bank of Singapore is quite progressive in sort of testing out blockchains. So they try both public and private blockchains. I mean, Polygon was used as one of the blockchains for a DeFi project that all the big banks of Singapore was involved. So I think both private and public blockchain are going to coexist. And when you say like a comparison, I would say that it all depends on the client's need. For example, if the client is looking for a private chain because they just want to have few people, few stakeholders, then that's fine. It's their requirement. But they will both coexist in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonny. So Giovanni, maybe starting with you. I'm going to pick on you now. So if you recall, I guess, in your travels and the work that you did with previously and also now,
Sure.
If you could pick an example, a project, a use case, something specific that you worked on,
Yeah.
and why was one or the other most relevant for that? A public or a private, depending on what you were doing? And
Yeah.
why was that most relevant?
No, well, public was never in the picture, to be honest. Because the idea was to use blockchain to address the business processes between enterprises.
Yeah.
Right? So whatever, a finance process, a trade finance process with our clients, suppliers. So it's a matter of fact, and maybe here I risk also my career, because if the managers are here, they could be a little bit disappointed with me. But it's a matter of fact, enterprise blockchain is still private and permissioned.
Yeah.
Why? Because the big corporates, they don't trust to have their data in a public environment. They want control. It's natural to have control.
Yeah.
Still, you can have enterprise blockchain application for small, let's say medium enterprises. Why? Because they have to risk. It's always a balance of risk-benefit.
Yeah.
Big corporates, they have already the business in place. Why to risk, right? Maybe you guys, you remember also the business of cloud, which I remember when many years ago, corporates, the big corporates, they were the last joining the cloud.
Yeah.
Why? Because you have to put the trust in someone, right? So they were the last. And the same pattern is for enterprises joining public. It's not the case yet. Still, is the way to go. So if you are good, if you are smart, if you put all the pieces in place, then you can still make it. And that was my ambition. And for you, if you are interested, tomorrow I will show you an example on how we are doing now enterprise blockchain for big institutions in Japan using a public blockchain. So you can still do that.
Yes.
But it's still, you need to be extremely brave, you need to be extremely innovative, and at the end, it's not only a matter of blockchain and the technology itself.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ask me why did you succeed in Ericsson, I would say blockchain technology itself is one component, but there are many pieces that you have to bring all together to make the application successful and adopted by the users. So here is the default that I see in many, focusing only on the technology. It's never only on the technology. That is a necessary but not sufficient condition to make the application successful. And when the applications are successful, when they are used, right? So when you have people loving to use that application, right? So the default I see many times is we build up engineers and technology people like us. They build those applications for engineers and blockchain funds, but that is wrong. There are many elements.
So would you say that this is an inevitable journey, just like cloud?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
we're just in a different wave.
It's all a matter of time,
Yes.
right? Because now I see more and more small companies adopting public blockchain for enterprise applications. That means the technology layer will be more trustful, which means more corporate, because it makes sense to use public. There are plenty of benefits to use public. Listen, for instance, without disclosing any secret for the application, we made even with this friend here from R3 a few years ago. It's a lot of cost going with a private permissioned platform.
Yes.
Lot of cost. You need a super big team to build up all the infrastructure. The interoperability, even between the private blockchain protocols, they don't even talk each other. So that means after I made the first, then I said, okay, now let's make the second. I had to restart from scratch again with 20 people, with all the skills in all the spectrum when you build up an application. So extremely costly, you have to maintain, crazy. Rather, if you have an infrastructure public, which is already available, you can use it, Then you need very few people just to build up the business logic, like smart contract. You need someone to assess, you deploy, gone. Few people, so it's inevitably the way, it's public. It will come sooner or later, but it will take a little bit of time. Even a trial, you fail, you retest, you learn, and but that is the way. There is, and tomorrow, if someone is interested, I will show what we are doing now with nChain, an enterprise application for Fukushima City.
Okay, very good. Yeah, we were listening very attentively to that one. Muneeb, over to you. Maybe what your thoughts on that? Either you can pile on top of what was said, or whether you have a different perspective, or
I concur with what Giovanni mainly said, right? And I think taking a step back a few years, blockchain was a new fad, not many knew in terms of what it brings to the table, right? So there was a lot of skepticism. People did not understand what a public chain really means. You would walk into a conversation with an enterprise client, and the first question they ask is, how is Bitcoin and blockchain the same thing? So do we use a Bitcoin or do we use a blockchain? So you had to decipher it to that level of detail. So within that remit, and to Giovanni's point, everybody was more focused on something trusted, proper governance, proper control. Nobody wanted to live with anonymity, no KYC, lack of privacy, lack of scalability. So we saw a surge in private, enterprise blockchain use cases and the likes of it. But soon the world realized that they're creating closed-loop digital islands, which do not necessarily talk to each other, as you rightly mentioned. So interoperability became the key ask. We are now, I believe, at a point of inflection where we think it's not one or the other. It's a hybrid model of the two, and which would be particularly driven by the use cases and the choice of the applications that you are building. If your use case entails it to be a private permission blockchain within restrictive participants, fair enough. And you think about it, if you think about CBDC today, and you're looking at the primary issuance of a CBDC, does it merit doing a primary issuance on a public blockchain? Maybe not, because of third-party risk management and whatnot. So you could use a private permission blockchain to do the primary issuance. But when you think about the distribution of a CBDC, is a private permission blockchain going to give you enough scale? The answer is no.
Absolutely.
So you need to be having an interoperability layer wherein you have primary issuance maybe on a private permission blockchain, but you have distribution on something which is more EVM compatible, more public focused. So it's going to be a blend of the two, a very specific hybrid model. And just to add on to that point, I think one thing that has also exacerbated that journey towards public chain more is that initially we had concerns about scalability. We had concerns about privacy predominantly. But now we have very strong privacy-enhancing tech that you can deploy on public blockchains. You have addressed the scalability concerns by improving consensus mechanisms, and layer 1s and layer 2s coming with much more profound solutions. So yeah, it's an evolution, but I think we are getting there, and the future definitely, in our view, is hybrid. Even though from an EY standpoint, we have put a lot of focus on public blockchains. If you look at our product portfolios on privacy, on tokenization, on reconciliation, etc., they're all built on Ethereum, and they're all built on using EVM-compatible frameworks. And we have now seen a lot of enterprises started using them and uptake for such solutions.
Very interesting.
May I elaborate
Please.
just a little bit, right?
Keep it interesting.
I completely agree with what my friend here said. It's very use case specific, right?
Yes.
But there is a fundamental question when you use private blockchain and you start taking confidence with the private blockchain protocols, which is really blockchain technology? Because at the end, many of those private permissioned protocols, they are not immutable. They are very controlled by ones, so you miss basically the decentralization, and rather than using an immutable ledger, then you use a database. Then the point is, for those ones claiming, yeah, we use a private permissioned blockchain, my question is, are you sure you made the right choice? Because maybe you could use a simple distributed database without using super complex technology like blockchain, which is still extremely complex from any side. So my question is, blockchain itself, it doesn't mean, depending on the protocol, but it doesn't mean all the protocols, they have all the same capabilities, right?
would you say that complexity, I mean, I think this topic is not trivial, right? There's a lot of details, a lot of cryptography, a lot of complexity around the configurations of whether it's a blockchain, a DLT, how you configure it, whether it's a database and so on. And you get into very fundamental questions at some point. Yeah. Do you think the complexity hinders us, helps us? There's a lot to educate people on, clients that don't have the capacity to really, or maybe the ability to really understand the details of this.
You need to educate, right?
Yeah.
I remember, despite my previous company is a company of all engineers, but blockchain is still new, so you find someone with some knowledge. But one of the main problems I had when I started pitching blockchain, if you talk to your IT guys and you talk of decentralization, they get extremely scared because in a corporate environment, you need to have full control. So if you pitch saying, yeah, but nobody is really in control, yeah, that is the wrong pitch, actually, right? So,
and I think
maybe Neeraj, you can comment on your perspective and stuff, and we'll come back to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no. So see, right, when it comes to blockchain, as we all know, blockchain is not coming from any enterprise or from a single company. Blockchain is coming from this global world where there's no standards as such that how a blockchain should operate or what a blockchain can do. But when it came so fast that enterprises or people, they started saying that blockchain is a disruptor. So basically, while working with the enterprise, and probably you will agree, that initially seeing the hype of the blockchain because of the crypto, the blockchain, the hype cycle, the technology hype cycle really high, and that scared enterprises that now this is going to come and this is going to disrupt their operation, this is going to disrupt the governance, this is going to disrupt pretty much everything within the organization. And this is what I saw during the early period of 2014 till 2018-19, where blockchain was taken more as of a disruptor, and that scared architects, executives across the organization that, hey, how I'm going to take this thing. But what I now see is now slowly people have understood, and people think that now people are not talking about blockchain, is that it is not a disruptor, but this is an accelerator, right? So over the time, what basically personally I've seen that blockchain has moved away from being a disruptor to more being an accelerator. So from the outside news, lots of people say that, hey, blockchain has lost its hype or people are not using blockchain. That is not true. Now, eventually, people have understood using the blockchain, and now it has become a core part of the organizations across the world. That's how I see, but feel free to add.
I agree with you. One of the lessons I learned when I used to promote blockchain internally to the company was never use the word disruptive. Never, never. Rather, no, that's true. Yeah. Meaning you need to show the benefits rather than saying now with this architecture we will disrupt everything. Then it's really bad pitch.
On top of that, I'll add one more thing. Also, we need to understand blockchain today, what it is, 10, 12, I can be wrong, but 10 to 13 years old, depending on where you are starting using with the blockchain. And enterprise blockchain is what, not even 10 years old. So we are in very, very early phase. So we are in the 90s of the internet. You see AI today, but AI are decades and decades old. So why there are millions of reasons, but one of the reasons why suddenly AI got its boom over the time, because of the infrastructure, because of the speed of the internet. Why ChatGPT? One of the reasons is the Microsoft behind it, right? Like they are pushing lots of CPU powers, and that's why we see the AI. For blockchain, I feel today is like still that infrastructure is missing. Still that infrastructure needs to be there where you start utilizing blockchain in your day-to-day life. I know some of them we are already using, but we are little far from there. So we do have to understand we are not even 10 years old.
So, I think you just wanted to add a point on that. with a little bit of pragmatism in terms of how we look at this paradigm shaping up. Calling blockchain an accelerator at this stage, yes, great, but at the same time, we don't see it getting embedded in mainstream technology stacks as yet. And that brings us to the point of education, nascency of technology, barriers to change and whatnot. There are a lot of things that need to be considered when even thinking about blockchain. As of today, 10 years later, to your point, when I go and start speaking to clients and walk into CXO conversations, you have to start with a blank slate. You have to basically start with the fact that what is a blockchain,
Yeah.
right? And we have been in this space for 10 years. And that is something to ponder over, because that piece of education is clearly missing.
Yeah.
And that education is not necessarily orientated in terms of what the technology is.
Sure.
It's more orientated towards what the technology can do for you as a business. That's what the stakeholders are more interested in. And if you're able to overlay that, I think the speed to go to market and acceleration would be much higher.
100%.
Yeah. I found in the latter years of my sort of blockchain journey that I never actually used the word at all. Actually, I focused purely on the solution and the things that we're trying to solve for,
Absolutely.
and the problem that we're trying to solve, rather than on the label.
Rather than
Because you get way into the weeds, and all of a sudden it's like you're selling the tech at the end. That's not the point.
There is another word that I learned we should avoid when you talk to enterprise blockchain, which is transparency, right? When we talk about blockchain, we say, yeah, blockchain is transparency. Yeah, try to talk to the finance guys about the transparency in a corporate environment, right? So they say, yeah, really, then maybe we don't need it.
Yeah. Sonny, thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree to what every one of you has spoken about it. But in my opinion, what I have seen, I started my career in 2017 with cryptocurrencies and ICOs, raising funds using initial coin offerings and stuff. So what I've seen is, because of the cryptocurrency use cases, the public blockchain became very famous, and the adoption was quite rapidly there, because the banks never saw cryptocurrency as a legal tender, right? They were always against the cryptocurrencies when the cryptocurrencies were very unregulated and risky asset class. So, but private blockchain, as he rightly said, that obviously the banks have understood the underlying infrastructure that it provides, and they want to build their own silo, a chain where they can operate themselves, and obviously mint money. So that's another thing. With XDC Network, we are both public and a private chain. As I said, we are an RWA chain. We have tokenized digital US securities, and we have also got a use case. We have tokenized gold on the XDC network. So these are some of the real use cases, and we have a large ecosystem around that as well. And trade financing also. So any cross-border trade, if you know how complex the supply chain is, we also provide solutions over there. But again, it's up to the client's need. If the client is looking for a public chain, we support them with the public chain. If the client is not looking for that, then we support whatever the client is looking for. So, but again, coming to, if we are debating, I think there is no debate. They both coexist.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask each of you a question around, what do you see an application where, even in the future, that you would never see a public sort of blockchain being used in the enterprise space? Because I think we talked a lot about sort of, the coexistence of the two and so on. But are there applications of that you've seen, examples, scenarios that go, this will never work on a public blockchain for X reason? And maybe the answer is no, none. We expect everything to go to the public blockchain in the future, but maybe there's something that you've seen in your travels.
Well, if you ask me now, right now, one of the applications, and now I really spoil my career. Now I have done. Looking for a job from.
Okay.
So now I think the application that we will not see on public is CBDC. And the reason is, like I said before, which bank would trust to put its most valuable asset in a public blockchain and rely to some miner not in their control? If you ask me now. But I think in 3 years or so, when the banks will, not only the banks, but even the big corporates will start trusting on the technology, then that is still the path even for banks. Now, there is a big hype on CBDC things, right? But if you see, all the POC, MVP, experimentation, they are on public, on private permissioned blockchain.
Yeah.
But what do you expect? Banks to put things clearly on the public visualization? No, this will not happen right now. So maybe now.
So now.
Now I don't see.
When?
And
would you change your opinion in 5 years' time?
Well, sure, and that's why the company shouldn't fire me, because in 3 years or so, we will go public. I have no doubt about this.
Okay. Pile on or find some other.
No, I think in my opinion, before jumping to the conclusion in terms of which use case, I think what we need to fundamentally unravel is why is there skepticism around public blockchains?
Yeah.
When you think about enterprise use cases and regulated use cases as such. Right? The first and foremost is third-party risk management. Right? None of the regulated entities is going to put their assets on a platform which does not cover enterprise risk management under the core. So that's one of the key reasons. The second is scalability. Enterprise use cases require very highly scalable, resilient solutions, so that scalability is the key, which is currently a barrier. And then you have barriers around anonymity, right? So on public blockchains, you don't have trusted users, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you look at the flip side of it, does a public blockchain inherently provide you more security than a private blockchain? Yes, by default. It's a much more secure platform. Does it provide you access to a much wider market? Absolutely yes. Does it have more liquidity on the platform? Absolutely yes. So the core concern is to understand if public blockchains can be enhanced to a level of, resiliency, third-party risk management, operations resiliency to be built on it. More importantly, the overlay of privacy on top of it. I think the future can get towards that.
Agree.
Now, with respect to the use cases today, rightly so, I think CBDC is one which I do not see in the very near future being natively issued on a public blockchain. It can definitely transgress into a public blockchain from a distribution standpoint, but native issuance. And similarly, some of the use cases in the regulated enterprise space, if you talk about regulatory reporting and you talk about use cases like, which we started exploring, say on MiFID II, wherein banks have to share their security settlements reports with the regulator at the end of the day. Would they do it on a public blockchain as of today? No, because of the lack of privacy and scalability. So for such use cases, we think that hybrid model of a private permissioned for issuance versus distribution on public would work well. Right.
Yeah, no, I think I agree, right? It's, and as I said, right, it's just, we are a bit early. Like we are way, like today also, we are still ahead in the game. What I do see personally is there's lots of things, as I said, like is being developed on the private. But if you see the full, like the entire design, it's not aimed to be in private. It will go on public one day or the other. It's just that the right infrastructure, the right technology is still not there, and it will take its own time. So as we said, right, like go back to the 90s, right? All the universities, schools across the world, they were developing their own network, right? We all know. That time internet was not there. And when some part of internet started coming, not every network was connected. That time also, although I was too young that time, but when I read back of those early 90s days, so you will see there were lots of debates, hey, how can a bank connect to internet? How can a university connect to an internet? How a newspaper organization will connect to the internet? But see today, everything is online, everything is connected. So even what I feel like, regardless an enterprise, an individual, a startup, whether they are building for a private or public, the day will come when they all will be interconnected and it will be a one single large network. Like they all can have, like there are debates, right? Which blockchain will be there, whether it's going to be Fabric, Ethereum, Bitcoin, on and on. But eventually the truth is, everything is going to get interconnected the way we see the internet of today's world.
What was the question? Sorry, I missed the question.
Well, the question was more around whether you believe that which use case, would you see sort of an application that would never be put onto sort of a public
Never be on
blockchain?
blockchain.
Yeah, it would not go on a public blockchain.
When all this blockchain hype, when the hype cycle started, I think people were saying blockchain is a solution looking for problems. So there was no problem. We are forcing the technology. So I think when I started my career also, like, why do you need a blockchain? The system is still running. It's functioning. But I think eventually with time, when all those features of the blockchain, like immutability, transferability, and all that, fast speed, and all that, our basic fundamentals, people started understanding. That's when obviously the blockchain sort of picked up, and when enterprises started embracing it. When I say enterprises, I mean the banks, the financial institutions, and people become serious. Like, okay, so banks have started adopting blockchains. Obviously, it's our own private blockchain, but still, that shows that this technology is here to stay. I would, in my opinion, heavily regulated entities, banking, financial institutions, I don't think they will ever adopt public chain, because there was a use case in Singapore. So they were testing Polygon, which is a public chain, for a DeFi protocol, where they got all the banks. But I think that project didn't take off, sorry, off the record. And primarily because it was a public chain.
Do you think it's because it was too early, or do you think this will never happen?
The stakeholders were concerned about the privacy and the security of the public chain. It was not about too early, it's about the chain. And I think that got scrapped, and they're probably moving to a private chain of their own.
Right.
So John, if I may make a point there, I think the narrative of banks and financial institutions will never go on public is not as right as we know today, right? Because you have the likes of the World Economic Forum, you have the likes of the UBSs and the Santanders of the world, who are actually issuing bonds on public blockchains today. Mm-hmm. So it's happening. And the core moot point there is, what use case, and does it really merit that particular blockchain is the key question. As long as you're able to address the market and the ecosystem and the concerns around privacy and security, underlying protocol doesn't really matter. So we have seen that already transition, right? So we have seen banks and regulated institutions using public blockchain and issuing assets on them, but it's just a matter of mainstream adoption to scale up more.
Yeah, if I may, that is true, because when we think of blockchain, we just start thinking from the concept, from the point of transfer of value, right? Like right away when blockchain comes to our mind, to most of the people, because of the crypto, right, is that, okay, blockchain means transfer of value, and banks will only, or the financial institution will use it only for transfer of value. That's not true. Transfer of value or crypto, I've been saying for more than 10 years, it's one of the million use cases which can be on blockchain. It's like AI, right? If you say, is ChatGPT, like searching is the only application of AI? No, like there are millions of applications. Crypto, we know one of the best use case which can be done on blockchain, but there are many millions more, and that's where, right, like, I totally agree that it's all about finding that right use case. Every organization is trying to work in that direction. Lots of organizations have also succeeded, but we'll see more and more in coming days to come.
Yeah. And maybe, Sonny, starting with you, and as we're going out, because we're running out of time here as well, but what do you think needs to happen for sort of public blockchains to become more useful or usable, I guess, in a completely sort of in a public sort of blockchain context? What do you think needs to happen from a development point of view, and the regulation point of view, whatever? Just some thoughts on maybe what's needed.
So, the question is, sorry, I can't hear properly. I don't know.
Yeah.
What should happen on the public blockchain, right?
Okay.
So that it becomes more widely utilized.
Yeah, exactly.
So a very good example of what we are doing at XDC Network. So basically, we are encouraging developers and builders to come and build on the network, on the chain itself. And what's the prize money? Prize money is we are giving investments against their tokens, against their native tokens. So more and more developers and more builders and founders come and build on the chain. That's the only way to scale up a chain. So that's what we are doing with all the big VCs and the accelerators to get onboard dApps onto XDC Network.
Very good. Neeraj?
Yeah, sure. I think the answer is in your question, right? Regulations. Today or tomorrow, the regulations are about to come, will come. we all know governments across the world are going to regulate it. So many people in the crypto space, they think that is bad. Actually, that is good. The day it start getting taxed, right? Like I know in Canada, that's where I'm coming from. We pay taxes on crypto. So the more the regulations will come, I think the wider the adoption of blockchain, public blockchain will grow.
Right.
So I'll take a bit of a technology stance on it. 2-3 things that I believe would need to happen. One, that there needs to be proper enterprise support for public blockchains, if enterprises are due to get on board with public blockchain. So there needs to be a support entity, which provides underlying infrastructure support. There needs to be standardization. So public blockchains should be able to interoperate seamlessly with private blockchains. And from a standardization perspective, standardization by virtue of the smart contract standards, the security standards, etc. And the third, I believe, is that element of scalability and privacy, which is getting addressed to a larger degree.
Yeah.
Privacy mainly. Fourth would be around having proper governance with respect to KYC, AML, sanction screening on public blockchains. If a culmination of these things comes together, I think it's a very good step forward, making public blockchains much more eminent.
Thank you. And Giovanni?
They said it all.
They said it all.
The public blockchains, they have to become a little bit less purist, so to say,
Yeah.
and approaching more what enterprise blockchain is trying to do, meaning they know your customer, AML, all these regulations, right? They are more from the Web 2 world than the Web 3 world, right? So in order to join these worlds, the public blockchain, they have to become a little bit, they have to offer the bridge towards the traditional Web 2. And standardization and scalability, I mean, those are still super big issues to solve in public, in general.
And how much time do you think that will take for us to get there, do you think?
Well, now we have the big hype of AI, but people tend to forget AI is a technology from the 1956.
Yeah.
Okay, so blockchain it was born in 2008. We are still young. So assuming technology is accelerating, of course, so it will not take maybe the 70 years or so that AI had to take to become what we know now, but still it's a technology 50 years old. So let's give at least 20 years.
Yeah, 20 more years.
I mean, the interesting fact is that DLT has been around since 1989, right? So it's not as new. It's just that blockchain amplified the newness of it. But to your point, absolutely right. I think it needs that transition journey. It needs that evolution and firming up. And I think we are moving in the right direction with respect to where we are heading. With the likes of enterprise Ethereum now coming in and playing more in the enterprise space, so there is willingness and appetite on behalf of public blockchains to move the needle.
Panelists, thank you so much for your session, and thanks for sharing your thoughts on this thing. Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.